rests heavy over the global stage. Why is Vladimir Putin silent? As the United States seizes Nicolás Maduro, the world watches for a word, a signal, a reaction from Russia's president, yet nothing comes. His silence is deafening, a pause pregnant with meaning, as allies and rivals alike strain to interpret what it could signal. Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs called the Venezuelan president's capture an unacceptable act of armed aggression, but Putin has refrained from saying anything at all. Putin's prestige and reputation suffered a blow, as Maduro was his most loyal ally in Latin America. Alisher Ilkamov, head of London-based Central Asia due diligence think tank, told Al Jazeera. The expert added that Maduro's value cannot outweigh the importance of a new world order being established by Donald Trump. A theory doing rounds claims that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin might have written off Maduro during their summit in Alaska last August. Russian researcher Nikolai Matrohin claimed that the agreement might have included concessions from Trump on Ukraine for the sake of post-war joint development of hydrocarbons in the Arctic regions.
We need Greenland for national security. And if you take a look at Greenland, you look up and down the coast, you have Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need it for national security. We have to have it. And he wanted to lead the charge, so we're making him, Marco, today, a special envoy to Greenland. Greenland's a big deal.
Another expert told Al Jazeera that giving up on Maduro won't help Putin to mend ties with Trump. Trump had rejected Putin's claim that Ukraine carried out a drone attack on the Russian president's residence.
Putin's residence.
I don't believe that strike happened.
Right. So Putin had said in that phone call to you that that strike happened. You came out and said that, and you believed Putin. There was some criticism.
There is something that happened fairly nearby, but it had nothing to do with this.
Why did you believe Putin in that moment and then go say that about Ukraine?
Because nobody knew at that moment. I mean, that was the first I heard about it.
So why not?
He said that his house was attacked. We don't believe that happened, as now that we've been able to check.
Yeah.
But that was the first we ever heard about it.
Galia Ibragimova, an expert with the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace think tank, told Al Jazeera that Maduro's capture may even inspire Putin to plan the capture of Volodymyr Zelensky. After coming to power in 2013, Maduro met Putin a dozen times, and each of his Moscow visits was a red carpet, pompous affair. In October, Maduro appealed to Putin, urging Moscow to send missiles for Russia-supplied S-300 air defense systems, repair Russian-made Sukhoi Su-30 fighter jets, and supply radars. On January 5th, Russia blasted U.S. during UNSC's special session on Venezuela. Russian envoy warns of horrifying consequences after Trump's shocker.
There is and can be no legitimate justification for the egregious crime deliberately and cynically committed by the United States in the city of Caracas. Nicolás Maduro and his wife in the United States, and as of today, as we know, in New York, we propose and call on the American leadership to immediately release the legitimately elected president of the independent state and his wife. Mr. Chairman, first of all, we would like to congratulate you on assuming the duties of Chairman of the Council, and secondly, to welcome the newly elected members of the Council. The beginning of the new year has shocked all those in the world who had hoped that respect for international law, non-interference in the internal affairs of other states, and reliance on diplomacy would prevail, and that the search for compromises would become the key principles guiding the work of the new American administration. The assault on the leader of Venezuela, which resulted in the deaths of several dozen Venezuelan and Cuban citizens, has, in the eyes of many, become a harbinger of a return to an era of lawlessness, forceful American dominance, chaos, and lawlessness, from which dozens of countries in various regions continue to suffer. There is and can be no legitimate justification for the egregious crime deliberately and cynically committed by the United States in the city of Caracas. We strongly condemn the act of armed aggression by the United States against Venezuela, which violates all international legal norms. In connection with confirmed information about the presence of the abducted president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, and his wife in the United States, and as of today, as we know, in New York, we propose and call on the American leadership to immediately release the legitimately elected president of the independent state and his wife. Any existing problems and disagreements between the United States and Venezuela must be resolved through dialogue. This is precisely what the UN Charter prescribes for us, the goals and principles of which a number of states in recent years have begun to apply selectively, depending on the political situation. Today we are reaping the consequences of their irresponsibility and selectivity in matters of observing the norms of international law, which they equated with a world order that we equate with the so-called rules-based world order. Here is your world order in all its glory, which horrifies even the most committed Atlanticists. Mr. Chairman, we express our firm solidarity with the people of Venezuela in the face of external aggression. We fully support the course of the Bolivarian government aimed at protecting national interests and the sovereignty of the country. The aggressive actions of Washington have already been condemned by many states and multilateral organizations, including the Non-Aligned Movement, the African Union, and the Group of Friends in Defense of the UN Charter. We hope that this international lawlessness will promptly receive an objective and comprehensive assessment in terms of international law using universal UN mechanisms and other multilateral formats. This process should not be influenced by the recognition or non-recognition of the legitimacy of any given state or association. Nicolás Maduro. Therefore, the vague muttering of an attempt to avoid fundamental assessments on the part of those who, in other situations, foamed at the mouth demanding that others comply with the UN Charter, today appears especially hypocritical and unintelligent. I hope you will realize this and stop using double standards and trying to justify this, a blatant act of aggression out of fear of angering the would-be resurrected American global policeman. What is especially striking is the unprecedented cynicism with which Washington did not even try to disguise the true goals of its criminal operation. Establishing unlimited control over Venezuela's natural resources and asserting its hegemonic ambitions in Latin America. In this way, Washington is giving new momentum to neocolonialism and imperialism, which have been repeatedly and resolutely rejected by the peoples of this region and by the global South as a whole. Dear colleagues, the current situation makes the unity of the entire international community extremely important. In the firm rejection demonstrated in the case of Washington of the methods and tools of American military and foreign policy. Only in this way can we force Washington to reconsider or even abandon its dangerous delusions. As we said at the previous meeting on Venezuela, the bell now ringing loudly throughout the region tolls for every country of the Western Hemisphere. It tolls for all UN member states and for the future of the world organization itself. To ignore it today means to show cowardice and lack of principle, essentially blessing the further erosion of international law and even basic civilized conduct between states. We must not allow the United States to arrogate to itself the role of some supreme judge, the only one with the right to invade any country, determine who is guilty, and assign punishment, and carry out these actions, disregarding the concepts of international jurisdiction, sovereignty, and non-interference. Is this really the kind of world we aspired to as we approach the 80th anniversary of the adoption of the UN Charter, when we all signed the corresponding statement by the President of the Security Council? Is this what the UN reform, which we all support, is aimed at? Or do the UN and the Security Council no longer exist today? And does everyone now have to go to Washington for permission to rule, and for every nation's right to self-determination and to choose its own destiny? Does that mean nothing? These are the questions that are important for all of us to answer today. And if that answer is honest and principled, then perhaps even the American leadership will openly, which declares its intention to govern another country in the interest of the United States, will look into its own constitution, which begins with the words, "We the people of the United States," and will actually start to recognize the sovereignty of other states instead of engaging in regime change against those it finds inconvenient.